I'm not going to sit here and bore you with a super long intro. If you clicked on this video, chances are you know what a draft grades video is. And if you don't, I'll run it down for you real quick. Pretty self-explanatory. Basically, we're going team by team, talking about the draft. I'm going to assign a letter grade to every single pick and then give an overall grade for the team in question. Going to be talking about all 32 teams over the summer. That's my big twist that I put on it. Not exactly reinventing the wheel, but not a lot of people give each team their own video to shine. Usually it's division by division, conference by conference, and those are totally legitimate ways of going about things and probably take a lot less work and save you a lot of time, but hey, I like to do things a little bit differently. Keep in mind, though, because of that time crunch, this intro is pre-recorded. I'm recording this all the way back in May. Who knows how long these videos will take to come out, so just keep that in mind. You know what team you're watching. You don't need me to tell you in the intro. You clicked on the video, you can read the title, you can see the thumbnail. Two quick things to keep in mind. Number one, I'm not a professional. I don't claim to be a professional. I am very much an amateur, so if I disagree with something your favorite team did, I'm not saying I know better than your favorite general manager, your favorite scout, if you're a freak and have one of those. I'm just saying I didn't agree with the pick. I didn't agree with the process. That's my opinion. Feel free to disagree and let me know in the comments below why you disagree with me or agree with the team, whichever it may be. Regardless, the point is, I'm not trying to say I'm better than anybody here. I just have opinions and I like to share them. Also, I have changed my grading scale up from last year, and that is to say that I actually have a grading scale now, as you can see on the screen. This will keep things more uniform, allow me to stay more consistent, and also provide some transparency between me and you as the viewer. So, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into whatever team we're talking about today. I'm going to be totally honest at the top of this video just to, get this out of the way. I am very angry at this draft class, not because I think it is a bad class, or because I have any bias against the 49ers or anything like that. If anything, I would be a little more biased in their favor, because I love the 49ers. They're a big fullback team, and if you know anything about me, you know that is, my thing. That's my niche, I guess you could say. But more specifically, the reason why I don't like this class, or why this class angers me, or why I've been dreading this video, is because of the amount of players they picked that I did not watch pre-draft. Going into this draft this year, going into the end of April, I watched 235 players. I know that isn't like mind-boggling when you have Dane Brugler, who has information on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players through the Beast and things like that. But for me, being 22, only a few years into this whole analysis, draft prospect, film watching thing that I do, I feel like that's a good number. That's something I'm proud of, right? I watched 235 players, wrote up a profile for each one, complete with strengths, weaknesses, my full thoughts on them, a player comparison, all that kind of stuff. But out of those 235 players, the 49ers selected 5 of them. This is a draft class with 11 names. So over half of this class, I had to go back and rewatch, and even then, I didn't get to all of them. I only have so much time. I only have so many things I can do. So I'm just going to tell you up front, Connor Colby, Junior Bergen, I know nothing about those 2 football players. That is not going to positively or negatively impact their grade, but I do not know anything about them. I'm going to be fully transparent about that. Outside of that, Nick Martin is a player who I knew a little bit about and had to go back and watch more. Upton Stout is a player that I had a clean slate going in. Jordan Watkins, I watched a little bit when I was watching Jackson Dart. Marquise Seagull, completely clean slate. Those are all players that you're going to see when I have my graphics that pop up. There is no draft board ranking, there is no position ranking, because they were not ranked for me. Not because they're bad, but because I didn't watch them. Other than maybe in passing, watching another player. But I did not sit down and say, okay, today I'm going to evaluate Nick Martin. Until after the draft, in which I did do that, and in Nick Martin's case, I didn't come away super impressed, and we'll talk about that. So I just want to make that known ahead of time, because I don't want it to seem like when I'm talking about some of these guys that I didn't watch, that I think they're terrible, or they're some bum that wasn't worth my time or something like that, right? The reason I didn't watch them is simply because I didn't have time. They weren't someone that was on my radar. So, with Nick Martin, Upton Stout, Jordan Watkins, Marquise Seagull, Connor Colby, Junior Bergen, nothing against them. They didn't end up on my board because of something that they did. It's just the way I went about things. And I do need to refine my process of selecting what players I'm going to watch and things of that nature. But that's a conversation for another day. I just wanted to make that known. I know I have spent almost 5 minutes talking about this now, but I do feel like that's important context going into this video. With all that said, let's talk about a player I did watch and a player that I honestly was a massive fan of in Michael Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia, who I flipped back and forth with Abdul Carter for my number one edge rusher. And I know that is a little bit of like a, holy shit, what are you talking about type of take. And what ended up putting Abdul Carter over Michael Williams for me was an evaluation that I got burnt on a couple years ago, because it was a very similar story with Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson. When it comes to these edge rushers who are freak athletes that are really good run defenders right now and have the potential to be a good pass rusher, it's almost always going to be the guy that's a really good pass rusher now that's going to be better. So because of that, Carter ended up winning out for me and ended up as my number one edge. But the difference between the two of them was not very big on my board. I had Carter as the 5th ranked prospect, Williams as the 9th ranked prospect. The grade on them was very similar, and I don't think there was like a huge gap between them. All of this to say, I love Michael Williams. Dude is a monster. He's only 20 years old, so he's got a ton of room to grow. 6'5", 260 pounds, 34 plus inch arms. He has the potential to be an absolute freak. His athleticism stands out immediately, especially his ability to move laterally, which is obviously very important for a pass rusher. He has the ideal frame and length for the position, as I already kind of alluded to. His motor is awesome. He's a very high motor player. He has a very explosive first step that allows him to shoot into the backfield before blockers can get their hands on him. When he does engage with blockers, he has a nice arsenal of moves that he flashed, notably a very pretty swim move that he went to quite a bit, as well as an effective chop move and a very strong bull rush. Obviously, that's going to come with him being bigger and having a little bit of juice to him. He's very capable of getting his hands into passing lanes and swatting passes, so he's going to be impactful in the passing game, whether he's getting to the quarterback, getting pressure, or just batting the ball at the line. He's a very strong player. What I thought was very interesting about his game is this is a 260-pound edge rusher who Georgia was playing on the interior, and he was successfully two-gapping. That is wild. That should not be possible. Two-gapping is the role of like Alfred Collins or CJ West, two guys who are 300-plus pounds. Michael Williams is 40 to 50 pounds lighter than those guys, and he was very capable of doing it. And not just capable, he did it very well. So that's something to get excited about. To bounce off of that, he is just an incredible run defender, both in terms of his physicality as well as his run diagnostics. He has fantastic eye and gap discipline. He's very rangy. He's capable of making plays from the backside of the run, which is always very exciting. And, he's also somebody that's willing to do the dirty work and set up teammates to make the big play, which when you have guys like Fred Warner sitting behind him who are going to come downhill and wreak havoc, that's a great thing to have. You love getting these guys who aren't afraid to, like I said, get their hands dirty and set up the teammates. His play recognition as a run defender is off the charts. On play action, he rarely, if ever, quite frankly, falls for eye candy, which is awesome. He's capable of playing inside or on the edge. I think with the 49ers, especially with the additions of Alfred Collins and CJ West, will keep him on the edge, but hypothetically speaking, you could kick him inside as a 3 technique if you really needed to. And then, like I said, he's 20 now. He'll be 21 during his rookie season. However, on the flip side of things, taking a look at some of the negatives, he does need to develop his plan as a pass rusher. There's a lot of promise there. It's just he doesn't exactly go in every play with a concise plan on how he's going to beat the man across from him, and sometimes that can cause him to have some problems. Obviously, he can improvise on the fly, but you don't want to do that every play. Sometimes you do want to go in with I don't want to say a script in your head, but just an idea of like, okay, I'm going to attack the outside shoulder, then cut back inside. That should open up a lane, or vice versa, whatever it may be. There's flashes of that on tape with Michael Williams, but it's certainly not consistent, and it needs to develop. And the same thing also kind of goes for his bag of pass rushing moves. I know I alluded to a couple moves he does have in his arsenal, but they're more flashes than consistent things at this point. Like, I would like to see him rely a little bit less on his bull rush and a little bit more on that swim move, on that chop move, and maybe even add a little bit more. Now, that being said, with how big and physical he is, some guys can get away with just bull rushing every play. We'll have to see if that works out for Michael, but you do want to have that kind of counter, if nothing else, in your bag, just to make sure, in case you get stalled or something like that. He's not the bendiest guy in the world. He's not someone that's like Von Miller in his prime, who's going to bend the corner and get to the quarterback that way. He's got to go through or around in a more upright motion, if that makes sense. He's a very high center of gravity, which is going to hurt his pad level against the run, something that's capable of being fixed for sure, just definitely notable through his time at college. He needs to get better at disengaging from blockers in the run game. Like I said, he's willing to do the dirty work and he's willing to set up for other guys, but there are some plays on film where you would like to see him shed that block himself and make that play. Granted, with the way he plays and with the way this defense is built, against the run, it's not going to be the end of the world if he just kind of stagnates in how consistently he gets off blocks currently, but I would definitely like to see that improve. And then also, a lot of people are going to point at the production with Michael Williams. It wasn't very good, but I'm going to chalk that up more to the way their defensive scheme was ran and what they were asking him to do, because he was not being asked to, be like the dominant pass rusher on that team. He was really being asked to eat space and let some of the linebackers come in behind him and make plays. So I'm sure that will improve when the Niners are like, hey man, you can hit the quarterback. We want you to do that. So I'm very excited to see how he'll pair with Nick Bosa. I think that's going to be a super exciting edge tandem. I love Michael Williams. He's going to be one of my favorite pass rushers in the league from day one. But yeah, I love Williams, and I'm very, very excited to see what he does for San Francisco. But then you move on to day 2, and I loved the first pick they made in Alfred Collins, the defensive tackle out of Texas, who was, much like Michael Williams, one of my guys in this draft. 6'6", 332 pounds, 34-plus inch arms. This dude is a monster. So taking a look at what he brings to the table, I already mentioned the frame and length. They're absolutely fantastic. He's explosive off the line, and honestly, his athletic profile is a lot better than you would think for someone who is 332 pounds. He's another very high motor, high effort player who consistently works his tail off through the whistle. His play strength and overall power profile are off the charts. This is shown by his consistent bull rush and his ability to jolt blockers upright. He can stack and shed with ease as a run defender. His run diagnostics are fantastic, and he rarely, if ever, much like Michael Williams, falls for play action. He is not going to bite on that eye candy. He maintains very good pad level and gap discipline against the run, so he's probably going to be a little bit more of a two-gapper for you than Michael will be. Obviously, that makes sense, given he's a defensive tackle and not a defensive end edge rusher. Is a very stout anchor against the run, thanks to a dense, powerful lower body. And then also at Texas, he had a lot of experience across the line of scrimmage. So he's, kind of played a little bit of everywhere. He could hypothetically play a little nose tackle for you. I think he's more of a 3 technique at the next level, especially considering they drafted CJ West, and we'll talk about him when we get to him. On the flip side, though, his pass rush plan does require major development, as his wins in college seemed a lot more just effort-based than anything, which is great. But obviously at the NFL level, you want to get to that quarterback quickly. Guys get the ball out a lot quicker at the next level. So Collins needs to work on getting to the quarterback with a little more skill and little less effort. That's not a good thing to say. He should maintain the same level of effort and get there with a little bit more skill. That's a better way to put that. I don't want him to come out and show less effort. That would be a terrible decision. On top of that, though, his pass rush tool belt does need development, as right now, I've already said, he relies solely on his bull rush and a little bit of a club swim move that he has, but you want to see that refined and broadened a little bit more. Additionally, his height can hurt his ability to take on double teams when lined up as a nose tackle. That's another reason why I think he's more of a 3 technique for the 49ers, but either way, awesome run defending defensive tackle with a little bit of juice as a pass rusher and the room to grow. Reminds me a lot of Akeem Hicks, which, again, as a Bears fan, that's some of the highest praise I can give a defensive tackle. I love Akeem Hicks. He's one of my favorite players ever. And they just move so similarly and attack the run in such similar ways. It's like a dancing bear out there. So you add him with Mykel Williams, Nick Bosa, and then also CJ West. That run defense that, quite honestly, was an issue for the 49ers last year, forget about it. Forget about it. You are not running on this football team. You're going to have to air it out. And that is where a couple of these other picks will come into play, as well as some of the already very talented players in the 49ers back seven will make their impact known. But either way, Alfred Collins is an awesome pick. But then in the third round, they made 2 picks that I just wasn't as big of a fan of. The first of which was Nick Martin, the linebacker out of Oklahoma State. And Nick Martin is a pretty straightforward evaluation, in my opinion, in the sense that he is an undersized, decently athletic developmental linebacker. And that's fine, but that's not the type of player you take in the third round. That is a player you're looking at maybe in the 4th round, definitely in the 5th to 6th round. You look at a guy like D. Winters, who is on the 49ers roster, currently was a 6th round pick for them. Granted, I think Winters was probably a little bit more athletic coming out, but the point of that is a more appropriate range to take a player like this. And I understand, you go out, you want to get your guy, and the 49ers are obviously very good at developing linebackers, so I can understand why they like this pick. But if you look at the Niners draft history in the last couple years, especially in the 3rd round, I don't think it's crazy to question their process. Because you look at their draft history in this range, I'll give them Dominic Pooney last year. They knocked that one out of the park. But Jake Moody and Cameron Latu in 2023, Tyrion Davis-Price and Danny Gray in 2022, Trey Sermon and Ambry Thomas in 2021, Jalen Hurd in 2019, and then, of course, in 2018, you take Fred Warner, so that's like the cutoff of the point I'm trying to make here. The last 6, going on 7 years now, they have made some very questionable decisions in the 3rd round, and I think taking Nick Martin falls into that same vein. Because, again, don't get me wrong, I don't think Nick Martin's like a terrible, horrible player that will never make an impact in the NFL or something. It's just, number 1, this was early, and number 2, I thought there were much better linebackers on the board. And even if you want to make the argument that they were looking for a specific type of linebacker, there were better linebackers in that mold still on the board. Nick Martin is an undersized, developmental, athletic linebacker. And even then, as an athlete, he's not like some freak, right? I'll point to another linebacker that was taken this year that I thought was a bad pick, Ruben Hippolyte to my Chicago Bears. That was a massive reach. That was a horrible, terrible reach. But at least Ruben Hippolyte is like a freak athlete, right? Nick Martin is a good athlete, but when you look at some of the guys that were available in that same vein, like Sean Dolak or Chris Paul Jr., 2 guys that go to your division rival Rams, either one of those would have been a home run pick here. Even a guy like Danny Stutzman, who ended up going to the Saints, I know that's a little bit of a different profile, but he's just such a better linebacker. Some other names here that were on the board at the time, Barrett Carter would have been a really nice pick. Teddy Buchanan, I wouldn't have loved, but I think would have been a better pick. Even Smail Mondon Jr., who was another developmental linebacker, ends up going in the 5th round. I just thought he was a better prospect than Nick Martin. So taking him in the 3rd round, when he's somebody that you cannot rely on consistently in the run game, granted, his flashes are nice when he's coming downhill, but he's not someone that I feel you can rely on in the run game. In coverage, he's not very instinctive. He's a lot more reactive as opposed to, anticipating routes, anticipating breaks, things like that. He loses his man pretty often in man coverage. He gets caught on the quarterback too often. He falls for play action. He doesn't have great hands as, someone that's going to bring down interceptions. He's a fine developmental player. This is just way too early for that. So the real complaints here are less to do with Nick Martin as a prospect and more just to do with the process, the value, and the guys that were still on the board. I think Nick Martin can be a solid starter for the 49ers, but this is a pick where you're leaving a lot of meat on the bone. But moving off of that, to the end of the third round, the Niners got a comp pick, and they took Upton Stout, the corner out of Western Kentucky. And Upton Stout is a very interesting prospect to me because this is a very undersized nickel, 5'8", 181 pounds. And in a league where nickel corners are becoming more and more important, especially downhill in the run game, a little guy like this is an interesting projection, right? Now, I will say he does play a lot bigger than that 5'8", 181 pounds. He does not back down from competition. But even then, you can try as hard as you want. If Derrick Henry's running at you, or, if one of these bigger, stronger backs is running at you, there's only so much you can do, Taking a look at my profile on him here, though, he has decent length relative to his smaller frame. I already mentioned he plays a lot bigger than his size. He's aggressive downhill. He loves being around the ball. He's willing to press receivers if needed. He's a forceful tackler. His back pedal's very smooth. He's got fluid hips. He's a high-effort player. He's versatile. He played in man and zone. He has good timing on blitzes. The scheme he played in gave him a lot of different assignments. He had some really nice splash plays in 2024 in the backfield, and he has some background in special teams. That being said, though, the size, I already mentioned, is a massive concern. Because of his shorter frame, he is a short strider, which obviously is not ideal for an NFL corner. He's easily controlled by wide receivers in the run game. He has a really difficult time disengaging from blocks from wide receivers, like I said, let alone if he gets picked up by a tight end or a fullback or something. He tends to throw his shoulder and dive low in the run game as opposed to wrapping up, which is obviously not great. He lacks the top-end speed to run with fast receivers. He had a hefty amount of career penalties. He was very over-aggressive in coverage. He's a willing blitzer, but he is going to get eaten up if a blocker can get their hands on him. And then also when he's coming downhill, he needs to improve his angles he takes to the ball carrier. But overall with Upton Stout, I definitely see the appeal. This is one I see the appeal of even more than Nick Martin. It's a scrappy, athletic nickel corner who honestly isn't raw. He's pretty well developed. It's just that size is such a major variable. If you're betting on the tenacity, if you're betting on the ferocity, I get it. I am all for an underdog story, all for one of these little guys coming out and excelling. It's just, I feel like this was more, again, value-wise, more of a day 3 pick. There were guys that were a little bit better on the board. And then also, and we'll talk about him, I don't think he's the best nickel corner prospect they took. So those 3 things knock his grade a little bit, but a C+ I still feel is passable. And honestly, by 49ers third round pick standards, the guys I have already mentioned, he is far from the worst guy they've taken. So I do like this pick. I see the vision. There's just quite a few variables that hold it back for me. But then you get into day 3, and the first pick they made, CJ West, the interior defensive lineman from Indiana, was one of my favorite picks of the draft. This is such an awesome player. I had an early to a mid third round grade on him. 316 pounds. I know he's 6'1", but as a nose tackle, that is going to work in your favor. This is such an awesome defensive lineman. Reminds me a lot of one of my favorite players in the league in Poona Ford. That is very high praise for a short nose tackle to be compared to Poona Ford. That man is the standard, and I see a lot of his game in CJ West. He's got good bulk for the position. He's got notable athleticism with good lateral quickness, burst, and speed off the line. He possesses a very explosive first step to shoot into the backfield or initiate contact with offensive linemen. He's a high motor player who works his ass off every single snap. He has a good power profile with dynamite-like hands to jolt blockers upright. He stacks and sheds very efficiently in spite of having short arms for the position. He weaponizes his natural leverage to maintain ground consistently. His eye and gap discipline against the run are great. His run diagnostics are fantastic. He has a better anchor than you would expect from someone his size, allowing him to eat up space or two gap if needed. He's very effective as a gap shooter in the run game. He has a strong bull rush and active hands that give him plenty of upside as a pass rusher. On the flip side of things, obviously the height and length fall a little bit short of ideal, but with his bulk and the way he plays, it's not as big of a deal, right? This isn't like some crazy outlier like a 5'8" corner. This is a 6'1" nose tackle. That is very passable. And even then, I know I compared him to Puna Ford. He's not even as small as Puna Ford. Puna Ford is under 6 feet tall. But yeah, the size is definitely probably the reason he fell to day 3. Additionally, he's just not a super refined pass rusher. He relies too heavily on that power. You'd like to see him develop that a little bit more. But as someone who's a plug-and-play day 1 nose tackle, it doesn't get much better than CJ West. He has the upside to win as a pass rusher. So in other words, you've got CJ West and Alfred Collins, who, in my opinion, are stepping in day 1 as your 2 best defensive tackles. They're going to be incredible run defenders, and they have the potential to grow as pass rushers as well. A lot of flashes from both of them that you can get excited about. And truthfully, even if neither one of them develops into a crazy pass rusher, CJ West will be a great nose tackle. You know, you don't need those guys to rush the passer. It certainly helps when they can, because then you get a guy like Dexter Lawrence, or on a smaller scale, a guy like Andrew Billings. Whereas, you know, maybe CJ West is just more of a traditional guy, and that's okay. If that's the case, that's more than okay to take in the 4th round here. And then Alfred Collins, if he doesn't quite develop, he'll be a monster on early downs. That being said, though, I am very confident in both of their developments. These were 2 of my guys in the draft this year. I absolutely adore them, and I'm very excited to see them work with Mykel Williams and Nick Bosa across that defensive line. Also in the 4th round, they took Jordan Watkins, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss. And I'm just going to say up front, whatever you saw from Jordan Watkins last year, I can almost guarantee he's going to be better. Not even because of anything that has to do with him. It's because he had Jackson Dart throwing him the football. And Jackson Dart is terrible. He is absolutely awful. I am so scared to make my Giants video because I feel like the state of New York is going to try to find me. I do not have any faith in Jackson Dart. So his wide receivers automatically get a little bit of a one-up for me in terms of my thoughts on them, because I believe these guys got dealt a very poor hand. But taking a look at some of my notes here on Jordan Watkins, he has decent size and bulk for his height, being a 5'11", 196-pound receiver. He displays good speed and explosiveness on tape, which pairs with the fact that he ran a sub-4.4 40-yard dash. He's played both out wide and in the slot, which pairs very well with what the Niners kind of need. He's got a compact frame that's going to give him the play strength to break tackles. You're not going to mistake him for Debo or one of these massive wide receivers, but he can definitely bounce off some tackles from time to time. He plays through contested coverage and fights off press coverage pretty well. He has a good release package. He can release inside and outside. He's a viable red zone threat with good body control. He's able to stack defenders vertically, getting them on his hips before declaring his break. He's very elusive after the catch, making him a yak threat. He's contributed as a punt returner throughout his career. And then, of course, the Shanahan staple. He is more than willing as a blocker in the run game. However, on the flip side here, he lacks the ideal height and length for the position. He benefited from some blown coverage on many of his big plays, but again, I think that's more a result of Jackson Dart just not seeing the field than it is Jordan Watkins not being able to get open. Additionally, even though he ran a 4.37, he doesn't have like insane burner speed. He's definitely fast and he can create separation with that speed, but you're not going to confuse him for Tyreek Hill. As a route runner, there are going to be times where he will round off his routes, which obviously isn't ideal, but this is one of the best places to learn how to run a route in the NFL, with Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall and the Niners staff all in this building. Because of his length, there are going to be times where you'll see balls thrown his way that, should be catchable, but are going to fall just short of his reach. One other thing I do have written down here is that he may get relegated to the slot at the next level. But honestly, with this 49ers offense, I don't think that'll be the case. I can absolutely see him carving out a role as an outside receiver. Probably going to step in and be more of that wide receiver 4. We'll have to see what happens with Ayuk's health, but I do like this pick a decent bit. You look at some of the guys they've drafted in recent years, again, at wide receiver, most specifically Jacob Cowing last year in the 4th round. Ironically, I don't think he's quite panned out. I don't think he really showed a whole lot last year, so I can understand wanting to get a guy like Watkins who can step in and play some good football for you right away. I like that pick a good bit, and I hope he is able to show that he is much better than people gave him credit for because of, like I said, being stuck working with Jackson Dart. Then in the 5th round, they end up taking Jordan James, the running back out of Oregon, and I'm not going to lie, I wasn't a huge fan of Jordan James. I definitely thought there were better backs on the board here, but I totally get why Shanahan liked him. This is a tried and true zone scheme runner who doesn't do anything offensive, but also doesn't do anything crazy, right? I have written in my notes for him that he's a jag, but honestly, this running back room kind of needs a jag. You know, they need somebody who is just going to consistently get you like 3 to 4 yards and not do anything to fuck that up. And that's totally cool. So taking a look at what I have written down for him here, he's not a track star, but he certainly has enough speed to break long runs. He's explosive through gaps. He's got good short area quickness to switch lanes. He has much better play strength than you would expect from someone who's 5'9.5", 205 pounds, which is going to allow him to fight for tough yards with a pretty rude demeanor. He has great vision and patience to let blocks set up, find the hole, and attack. He wastes 0 time attacking once he locates a crease. He uses his small frame to get skinny and shoot through tight creases. He's incredibly elusive when he hits the 2nd level. Pretty consistently, he's able to fight and fall forward for extra yards. He had pretty good ball security, and he's capable of catching passes out of the backfield. However, that being said, obviously the frame is a little small, doesn't have great speed. He takes a few extra steps to hit his top speed, so his acceleration isn't great. His contact balance could definitely improve. His route tree needs some development, and he's not much of a pass blocker. So overall, he profiles as an RB3, and that is what he's going to be. He's going to be fighting for those RB3 reps. You take a look at the 49ers running back room right now. You've got him, you've got Patrick Taylor, you've got Izzy Abanikanda, who just got brought over, is still pretty young. And you've also got a UDFA we'll talk about in Corey Kiner. But, you know, I think Jordan James definitely has the highest floor out of those guys, other than maybe Kiner. And that'll probably result in him becoming the RB3, because with this running back room, obviously McCaffrey's great. Health has been a concern. And then Grendo is great. He's, you know, really good for big explosive plays, but he's not like a super diverse runner. Whereas Jordan James, he can kind of play that like Jordan Mason light role. I don't know if that necessarily makes sense because he's not as big or powerful, but he can be consistent, and that's what you're drafting him to do, is to be consistent. So no complaints there. And then also in the 5th round, just 15 picks later, they took Marquise Seagull, the safety out of Kansas State by way of North Dakota State. And I like this pick a lot. Makes a ton of sense to me as not only potentially a nickel corner, you know, someone that'll definitely be in that conversation, in that room, but also is some depth at safety. Like, obviously you have Jair Brown and Malik Mustafa, 2 guys that I am a big fan of. I loved both of those picks, and I think they have panned out pretty well so far. Obviously Mustafa got hurt, but I still have a ton of confidence in him. But after losing Talanoa Hufanga to the Broncos and, you know, looking at some of the other guys they have in that room, it's not a very deep room, and both of those safeties are coming off of injury. So getting a guy like Seagull, who is pretty polished by all means, is a nice pick. But getting into my notes here, Seagull is 5'11", 200 pounds, so not the craziest frame in the world, but certainly passable. He's a former corner, so he has like good corner instincts and footwork and fluidity and things of that nature, so he can hold his own in man-to-man coverage for sure. Also ran a 4.37, so he's a very good athlete. He plays with good patience when reading and reacting to receivers and how they're moving. He has a very smooth back pedal, and he's able to turn when manning up in the slot. So like I said, his footwork and his hip movements are very corner-like, which is very nice to have. He's a disciplined player who can track the eyes of the quarterback and read out throwing lanes. He also can be aggressive in coverage, but he's able to do it without being penalized. He didn't commit a single coverage penalty in 2024. He's a rangy run defender with good speed to track the ball carrier to the opposite side of the play. As a tackler, he's got great form. He's also a very high character player. He's very praised for his leadership and things of that nature. However, on the flip side of things, he is a little undersized again at 200 pounds. It's a little light for a safety, so his strength isn't fantastic, but it's not bad either. When he's playing deep, his anticipation and ability to come downhill and react isn't great. I would say it's about average. As a run defender, he will get over aggressive and miss tackles, overshoot a lane, take a bad angle, things like that. And also, he's not somebody that consistently gets off blocks, but he definitely can from time to time, and he's pretty good at avoiding them. So in other words, you've got an athletic defensive back who has some issues that can be costly, but for a 5th round pick, he is very polished, very instinctive, and can make a difference, I feel. So if I had to pick a starter just solely based off the college tape for the Niners and the nickel, I would lean Seagull over Stout, but obviously I'm not there for camp. I don't know how the two of them are playing, so we'll have to see how that plays out. Again, I want to reiterate, I don't think Stout's a bad player. I am just very scared of that size. That's kind of the only thing holding him back for me, so we'll have to see how that plays out, but I do think they have two very solid competitors for that nickel spot. And then the last player they drafted that we're actually going to talk about, because again, with Colby and Bergen, I'm sure they're great, I'm sure they're wonderful, I'm sure they'll make the team and be superstars and, all that kind of stuff. I just have never watched them play football. That's a lie. I have watched Connor Colby play football because I watched Caleb Johnson. I couldn't remember his name for a second, goodness. So I've seen their entire offensive line play, but I haven't specifically said, I know you're Connor Colby. I'm going to see what you're doing on this play. I've said, okay, that guy's on the offensive line, just like these other 4 guys. Now it's time to watch the running back. So let me know in the comments below what I'm missing on Colby and Bergen, especially being from a smaller school. I'm very intrigued by that pick. But the last pick that we're going to talk about is Curtis Rourke, the quarterback out of Indiana. I had an early 6th round grade on Rourke. They get him here in the 7th round. And he's a very fine backup. 6'4", 220, 24 years old. He is going to be a game manager backup through and through. He's a high IQ player who's shown he can handle full field reads from a clean pocket, adjust plays at the line, and handle coverage rotations post-snap. He's got a prototypical frame for the next level. He's got good arm strength. Not fantastic, but it's enough to get the job done. He's a tough quarterback who's not afraid to step into pressure and take a hit if it means delivering a throw. He has clean mechanics with very solid footwork. He does his best work in the quick game. He's accurate in the short to intermediate areas of the field from a clean pocket. He showed flashes of being able to layer velocity with touch on 2nd and 3rd level throws. He doesn't panic against the blitz, and he's very smart with the football, limiting turnovers. That being said, he will be 25 during his rookie year, but again, as a backup, that's not the end of the world. His release is a little sluggish. It takes him a while to get that ball out. He struggles to throw wide receivers open. His lack of athletic tools hurt his ability to extend plays. I would like to see him be a little bit more aggressive as a passer, but then again, as a backup, maybe you don't want him to be aggressive. And then also his injury history is very notable. But overall, Rourke as your 3rd string quarterback and potentially becoming the 2nd string after Mac Jones's contract is up, that makes a ton of sense to me. I think that's a perfectly fine pick. Nothing too crazy to talk about here, just a quality backup. And then the last player we're going to talk about is Corey Kiner, the running back out of Cincinnati, who is 5'8", 209 pounds, and I think is also very much in the running for that RB3 spot. Another guy I didn't watch pre-draft, but I was very interested, so I ended up going back and rewatching him on a whim, and you might think it's a little silly that I watched a UDFA as opposed to some of the guys they drafted. Honestly, that's a fair point. I just get really excited about the Niners run game, and I saw the Niners got a UDFA running back, so I was like, I gotta check this guy out. And honestly, he's much like Jordan James for me, in the sense that he is a fine player. I would say he has more power and especially contact balance to his game. Maybe not as fast, but he's got good burst and quickness, can hit the hole quickly. He's got a compact frame with good mass relative to his height. His size and density make him difficult to tackle with a low center of gravity, so that plays into that contact balance. He's able to break through arm tackles. He does a good job of regaining his balance when he's taking body shots. He has good vision to hit cutback lanes and sneak through narrow gaps. He processes what is in front of him very well to adjust to defenders in the open field. He gets downhill in a hurry as a runner. He has shown pretty natural hands as a pass catcher, and he's a willing pass protector that will step in front of blitzers and, do his job. That being said, speed just isn't really part of his game. He doesn't have that second gear to pull away from defenders. His long speed isn't very good. Ball security is fine now, but when you take a look at the measurements, his hands are very small, and that could become an issue. You're more likely to fumble if you don't have as much surface area to cover up the football. He fights hard through contact, but does lack that extra size and strength to push the pile. And then also, despite having some ability as a receiver, the sample size was pretty low in college. So I'm bringing him up more just to say this is another name that's in that conversation. I don't know where that last cut's going to be. I was mid-conversation and a fly flew into the back of my throat and caused me to choke a little bit. So I apologize if there's like a really abrupt cut there. But what I was trying to say was Kiner and Abanikanda and Jordan James and Patrick Taylor in that conversation for the RB3 spot for the 49ers, which is going to be important. We'll have to see how that plays out, obviously, and that we'll know that over the next coming months. But I do think Kiner has a dog in this fight. I do think he can, potentially take that job. But as a whole with this Niners class, there's a lot of names here that I like. Mykel Williams, Alfred Collins, CJ West, 3 of my favorite players in the class. Love that they're all going to one team and they're going to get to wreak havoc together. Jordan Watkins is someone I'm very excited to see because I want to see what he looks like with a real quarterback throwing him the football. Upton Stout and Marquis Seagull, either one could be a day one starter at nickel. Nick Martin, I'm excited for his development. Even though I said I wasn't a huge fan of the pick, I want to be wrong because I like the Niners linebacker core. And I want Fred Warner to have a new Dre Greenlaw sooner rather than later because that makes for exciting football. Jordan James is a very fine RB3, and Curtis Rourke will be a very quality backup. So with all that said, I'm giving this class a B+. Definitely some very nice picks here. Some picks that I'm not quite as sold on as I've already said, but we'll see how they play out. I know I've said that like 6 times, but that is the truth with these videos, right? I can say whatever I want, but at the end of the day, we'll see how it plays out. But all that being said, that is going to do it for this video. I have been recording for just over an hour now because I am having a terrible time talking today. It has not been a fun talking day, but with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to leave a like down below, as it does help out the channel a ton. It shows your support, it shows you care, and I really do appreciate it. Also, make sure to let me know down in the comments below what you thought about this class, what you thought about my opinions on this class. Am I too high, too low on anybody? Was there maybe a UDFA that I didn't cover that you're excited about? I'd love to hear it. If you have thoughts on Colby or Bergen, I would love to hear those as well, so I understand that they're football players that actually exist. Obviously, I'm being a little bit facetious, but truthfully, I know nothing about them, and I would love to know literally anything. But yeah, let me know whatever you want to let me know down in the comments below, as that also helps out the channel a ton, and I love being able to interact with you all. And also make sure to subscribe for more NFL content coming your way throughout the summer, into the regular season, and so on. I will be talking about the 49ers at some point this year. I don't know what it'll be. Probably a Kyle Juszczyk video, probably something else as well. I always end up making at least one video about the 49ers. I kind of have a couple staples on this channel. There's always at least one Bears video, at least one 49ers video, and at least one Nnamdi Madubuike video. Those are 3 things you can count on from the MillerFootball channel. So if any of those interest you, definitely make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. And as I already said, in case you missed it, I hope you enjoyed this video. And more importantly, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you truly do deserve it.
Had a chance on the throwback. This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow.
Using that